Dragon Age the Veilguard pre-release reviews are out, and they are extremely divisive to say the absolute least. But not in the way that I was expecting, because you have someone like Mortismal, who I think offers very fair and balanced critiques after 100%ing games, who loves it and thinks it's the potentially best Dragon Age game out of the 4. And then you also have someone like Mr. Matty Plays, who I think is generally more positive and optimistic about games, although also offering generally fair and balanced critiques. Someone who loved the game in the preview event, coming out and saying it's an absolute disappointment on almost all fronts. And then we go to the gaming journalists, who are giving this game pretty much an 85 across the board on average. This game is sat from between an 82 to an 88 today on Metacritic, with that constantly changing with how many reviews are coming in. And I think I know why this game's so divisive, and I'll elaborate on this a lot more later in my video, but I think it comes down to one big thing, and that's, what do these people find valuable, or what is of value to them within an RPG experience? And before we get started here, we have hit 500 subscribers. My goal is 600 by the end of this week. You guys have supported me so much over the last couple weeks. I really appreciate it. If you like gaming news and you like gaming reviews and you're new here and you like this video, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. I really appreciate you guys. Now let's get into the video. So I've watched a handful of these reviews. I've looked over Metacritic. I've read a lot of the different gaming journalist sites to see what they thought about the game, and I want to cover a lot of these here, both good and bad, and again, at the end of the video, tell you guys why I think this game is so divisive as a whole. And the first one I want to get to is Mortismal. Mortismal is a reviewer that covers games after 100%. He did this for Dragon Age, and overall, he absolutely loved the game. After grinding this game out for around 60 hours, he came away thinking it was one of, if not the best Dragon Age games, with the best combat potentially of the entire series, very little bugs, lots of choice and consequence within the game, but still pointing out some bad, which we had some worries about before the game's official release, which is going to be in 3 days. And these bads are, you're not bringing hardly anything from the previous Dragon Age games into this game. On top of that, your character really can't be mean to anyone. It's not like Baldur's Gate 3 where you can be a complete dick and change the entire game because of that. So that is a big thing for a lot of RPG players, if you can't be the character that you set out and want to be, and that is definitely a bummer. But again, overall, listen to what he has to say about this game.
As a conclusion, the base game of Dragon Age the Veilguard is $60 US, and for that price, I think you're getting a great game that does a lot of things really, really well. That makes it, as far as I'm concerned, the best entry in the series, and frankly, my own personal game of the year. So probably needless to say at that point, I'm absolutely giving this one a buy. I think you should check it out. I think it's very good. And while I acknowledge that continual shift in direction from the original game isn't going to be for everybody, this is still a great game.
So after hearing that from Mortismal, you might think, okay, yep, confirmed. This is a great game. Still going to try it out for myself, but this so far is looking like an absolutely fantastic experience. There's a lot more reasons to be more excited about this game. Maybe a lot of our worries were kind of hashed out in the full game. And then you get to the next review from Mr. Matty Plays, who I think is generally, like I mentioned, more positive, more optimistic about games for the most part. Someone who loved the game in the preview event, which I'll get to that after this, but I'll let you guys hear what he has to say about it. But Mr. Matty Plays came out to pretty much only give one positive, and that is the last 5 hours of the game, the conclusion of the game, and that every other part of the game, for the most part, was an entirely big disappointment.
No single game has made me go through the string of emotions this one has, because its characters evolve as little as its gameplay. The mistakes made with plot pacing are innumerable. All of the real high-impact choices are baked into the final 2 hours of the game, making them feel really minimal in the scheme of things. Past Dragon Age games matter little here if your 3 available choices in the keep taught you anything before launch, and I'll detail that one later. And last but definitely not least is the line delivery and writing quality are at times embarrassingly low, even for those who have sworn off BioWare for years and are not like me and have continued to play their games and look forward to them.
And he even went into why he liked the game in the preview event, but was very disappointed when he actually got his hands on the full game. And I think this is pretty damning for BioWare as a whole.
But secondly, BioWare and EA were not fully honest about the framing of this preview. As stated in my preview, what we played was across 5 save files under the definition of the first act, with 2 more to go in the rest of the game. Now, I walked away very excited thinking, man, if this is the first act, imagine what they can bring for acts 2 and 3. Then I got the full game. I entered my 20th hour, still not at the end of act 1, what I experienced in the preview. 30th hour, still hadn't reached where my preview ended. It wasn't until the 35th hour that I had hit this stretch of the game that was defined as Part 9. Now, Maddie, why does all of this matter? You've previewed a number of games before. Well, effectively, what EA and BioWare showed us, and in turn you, was a highlight reel of parts 1 through 9 in Dragon Age the Veilguard, and there are 14 in total in the game. And I would not personally define parts 1 through 9 of any 14-part story as a first act. That is almost, if not more than 75% of the main story on display, including major choices. And while the perceived dishonesty here does not affect my final score, it definitely pissed me off.
And that also pisses me off a bit, because when you're telling people in the preview event that you're going to be playing Act 1, and then they play quote-unquote Act 1, and it's pretty much all of the biggest and best and most consequential moments and decisions for over 75% of the entire game, you're obviously going to walk away having a more positive review. You're not playing anything that might be monotonous, anything that is quote-unquote fluff within the game. You're only playing the biggest set-piece moments of the game as a whole. And yes, this is probably why they did not give everybody at the preview event a full copy of the game. This is almost 100% why. Because when they do, they're going to have a much different perception of the full game, thinking the one they played in the preview was just the very start of it. And then you get to the whole other end of the spectrum again. Someone like Dantix Gaming, who generally is very positive for the most part about this game or about a lot of games as a whole, but has definitely had some very valid criticisms going into the release. He absolutely loved the game. And despite him echoing a lot of what Maddie Plays said about the dialogue, how it's cliche, and how it's not very good in terms of the interactions between the different characters and yourself, he went on to say it's the best combat of any of the Dragon Age games, that all of the quests, both side quests and the main quests, were very important and fun. It was a completely bug-free experience, and he loved the game, and here's his overall thoughts.
So to put a nice little bow on this, Dragon Age the Veilguard is a fantastic experience, filled with an abundance of choice, cinematic grandeur, RPG elements, and ultimately, fun. It isn't perfect, but it's something that I feel a lot of people will pass on, but really enjoy if given a chance. I don't give ratings because I find them kind of arbitrary, but this game would be right up there.
So boom, back on the high horse. The game is good. Lots of people like the game. It's a majority good game for the most part. Mr. Maddie Plays. It just might not have been something that resonated well with him. Well, then let's get the Skill Ups review.
For me though, Dragon Age the Veilguard was so disappointing that I cannot muster any enthusiasm or excitement for the Mass Effect project that BioWare are currently working on. I hope they get the chance to make that game, and I hope it succeeds where Veilguard failed. But if either of those things are to happen, it's going to be against all odds, because I think Veilguard will mark a permanent shift in the way we talk about BioWare, and it's a shift that makes me really sad.
Not what you want to hear. Overall, he said a lot of what Maddie Plays said. He echoed a lot of the bad sentiments there, as well as a lot of the bad sentiments that even Dantix and Mortismal talked about with the cliche writing, specifically saying it was like HR was always in the room when you were talking to the other companions and characters in the game, which is a pretty damning statement from Skill Up. I think also he talked a lot about the combat and how it's more of a spectacle and not necessarily fun multiple hours after you're playing the game. And before I get to my thoughts on these reviews and my prediction on what I think I'm going to experience the game when I review the game, hopefully as unbiased as possible for you guys, I wanted to check out Metacritic, because if there was anything that I did expect in this entire review cycle for this game, it's that it was going to sit between an 80 and a 90, and that there was going to be not a single review review below a 6. I already called this, and that's exactly what we see. We see the Metacritic score sitting at an 84 right now, and if you go all the way down to the worst reviews, you're not seeing anything below a 6. But I think generally these are favorable. A lot of these are very biased. They want to keep getting review copies so they can obviously keep putting out articles to support their websites. But I think in general, it's always nice to look at this just to see what the kind of average is between a lot of these gaming journalist sites as a whole. So my overall thoughts on these reviews and whether I think you're going to find enjoyment in this game or not, it's going to very highly depend on what you think is valuable in an RPG. If you find combat, mechanics, and the actual gameplay as your most valued thing in an RPG, you're probably going to really like this game. But if you lean more on the story or the character interactions or the dialogue or even the consequences in the game, I think this is something that you're probably not going to love. And again, I want to touch on the preview event and them lying to creators pretty much straight up saying you're experiencing Act 1 when they really got 75% of the game as a highlight reel. Like, this is just such a dumb decision, because when someone like Maddie Plays comes and plays the game and he's reviewing the game and he experiences all the big moments of the game for the most part up until the final part of the game, these are going to be very dulled for him. He thought he was playing the start of the game and there was going to be so much more to go later on, and I think that's a horrible practice. So I just wanted to point that out as well. But overall, my prediction is that I'm probably going to enjoy this game because I'm someone that thinks combat is extremely important, and if the gameplay isn't fun, the whole game's not fun. But I was also really hoping that we would get great dialogue, great characters, great romance options, as well as a lot of good and big choices, which do seem to come into conclusion at the end to be very large choices that change the ending of the game a lot, but don't necessarily change a lot in between the start and up until the final part of the game. But I am going to be finding all of this out for myself, as you guys will be. I'm also going to be reviewing this game as non-biased as possible to give you guys my full thoughts on Dragon Age the Veilguard, releasing on the 31st, so that should be out within the week after it launches. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Let me know what you guys think down below about these different reviews and about the divisiveness of what people are saying about this game. Like the video if you like the video, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you guys again so much. I will see you in the next one. Peace!